Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the Sales World Channel, iHealth Radio, the NBC TV network here, and with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic, business topic, more, on the business side than the health side, but it's all good because it's all for you. And we want you to learn new things and hopefully take something out of this show and apply it in real life. And maybe one day you'll thank our, guest because our guest is special. And, he's on the screen with us already. And, Alex Brueckmann, and he is all the way from close to Vancouver, Canada. And his main thing is he helps people make money, build businesses that actually hit the 7 digits. And who doesn't want that, right? I mean, we'd like to hit the 6 digits and then 7 digits. And if there's an 8 digit, maybe we can go there. But it starts with the idea of going to a business and knowing how to do it, having a plan, having a strategy, having an idea, all that stuff. But before we get into all that good ingredient, the recipe of success here, we want to go back, to just introduce Alex and his background. I mean, again, he does a lot of things. He's a corporate business strategist, I guess. He is a coach. And like I said, I summarize that he helps people build, empires, hopefully. And but before that, his story starts, before this as a corporate person. And he moved from the corporate world into this and really took it on the road, and he's been helping business in Europe and Canada, I guess, all over the world. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Great introductions. Thank you.
I always try, but it's you got to do a better job than me. So let's talk about Alex. Who is Alex? Where did you start? I'm sure you started somewhere, with your career path, and then you took the leap to the world of entrepreneurship, and you did well, and you took that to help others. So let's talk about your origins, and then we'll go from there.
Actually, my origin isn't in business. My first job, my first professional education was in radio journalism. So I used to create content, design radio shows, host radio shows, and later on led a news agency in the entertainment industry. That kind of was my dream job back then, but I realized at some point in time that I needed some more. There was an external trigger point that helped me rethink my career trajectory. And I actually went back to university and studied business administration because I felt there are some things happening in the world that I really didn't understand. And they all had to do with how states, how governments, how businesses, how the economy is run, and how that all works together. So I was totally into the content, but I didn't really understand how the world works. At least I thought that's how the world works. So I went back to university, studied business administration, and then started my corporate career. And after 5 years in strategy design and strategy implementation, I realized that this is actually something I want to do full-time. If you work as a strategy consultant within a big corporation, there's always different stuff at the side that you got to deal with. And I really wanted to focus fully on strategy. So I became a management consultant full-time and transitioned relatively early into a specific field where strategy development and implementation and leadership development and leadership training overlap. So what I did for the last 10 years is helping corporations create new business strategies. So basically it's about understanding how the business should look like in 3 to 5 years down the road and how they're going to get there. And then helping the leadership population in these businesses understand their specific role in their specific area of responsibility and how they can enable their teams and leverage their creativity to make this happen. Having said all that, it was an awesome ride. It is super exciting still. I'm still associated to my new business, but as always, there is a girl and you move from Germany to Canada and build a new business because you can't take your old business with you, right? So that's how I ended up where I am right now. And in that change, which coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, I had an external trigger point where I had the opportunity to rethink whether I actually want to rebuild the same business in the same industry with the same type of clients, large corporate clients, or whether I want to do something different. And I realized that I have a ton of knowledge when it comes to strategy design and implementation that is typically not accessible to smaller businesses, mostly because this knowledge and these tools and these processes are held by big strategy consulting companies that are not cheap to work with. So often when you run, like, let's say a 7-figure business, you don't necessarily hire the McKinseys of this world. But the tools that they bring and the processes that they help you go through, they are super valuable also for you as a smaller business. So I basically took everything that I've ever learned about strategy and asked myself, how can I repackage it in a way that it is helpful for businesses somewhere between, let's say, $1 and $3 million in revenue, that they can use that knowledge with a few nudges from me, but basically can use it on their own without having to put a ton of money down on the table. And that's what I started to build. And I'm still building and building and building and writing books about it. And I just love it.
Well, Alex, first of all, we're going to talk about the book because you are an author, and we're going to talk about your book. And yeah, that's going to be a nice little discussion. But I want to go back to your journey, right? So again, you first of all, that was cool. I mean, just knowing that you were on the radio and you were doing production and all that just I just got back into that stuff. I did the other way around. but you know what? It's fun. I mean, it's a world in its own, and it's got its own I guess satisfaction and merits. But then you realize, the world runs around businesses and even radio, whatever. It's all a business. Everything is a business, pretty much. And you went, got the right education for it, and then you went to the corporate world and you did that. Now you did that in Europe, which is, every, I guess, area has got a different angle a little bit. And I guess in Germany, it's a little different. It's a powerful country, economically speaking, and that's a whole different, aspect of business, side. And, as you said, there's a girl, and then you came to the other side of the Atlantic. And actually, I would say you're on the Pacific side, but you crossed over the whole, land and water bodies. But you're on this side, and then you took that same concept of business and you try to apply it and help. But I do love the idea that it's one thing to do it for the corporate, the big large corporations, as opposed to the little guys, right? And there's a lot more little guys these days than you would think. A lot of folks would love to become entrepreneurs and start their own businesses, and many have taken that leap or that I guess that road pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic I think it's just got a nice little spike in that.
Oh, totally. The Great Resignation is in full swing, and a lot of people are just fed up with corporate policies that are not designed to make their lives easier. So they just take a leap of faith and start building their businesses now.
It is. Well, we're going to deep dive that, but I do want to just step back and talk about that, the reasoning, the motive behind people moving away and the corporate culture, because, again, like I said, you and I, we had a brief discussion. I've spent, almost 3 decades now in the corporate world. And on the side, I've always had some sort of a side gig, in a business of my own, and small businesses, but, extra income doesn't hurt, right? but also some retirement plans, as we could call them, beats the 401ks, but that's another story. But the fact is, corporate world comes with a lot of hustle and different angles, right? It's not easy, but that's where the culture is. Most of the people will go to school, And the idea is that you finish your grad school or undergrad, and then you wind up in a particular position and hopefully build a career path. And that's where it goes. That's where I started personally. And but many, I mean, unless you get to like the specific, specified, type of education such as medicine or engineering or architecture or whatever, where you do those kind of formations, you are into corporate, through a career path, business or otherwise, right? I chose sales and marketing. That was my education. And therefore that's where I wound up in the insurance world. And, 3 decades almost later, I'm still there. I've done some consulting, but for the most part, I've been in the corporate, either working for or with them. And I can tell you, it is not an easy, all right? Making it in the corporate is one thing. It's also, there's a lot of routine and there's a lot of clashing. There's a lot of, you have to accept a lot. You have to be able to maneuver a lot. There's politics that get into the business, aspect of it. And the other part of it is that depending where you stand, or you sit in that hierarchy, right? It could be a problem because, if you're an entry level is one thing. If you're in the leadership, you mentioned the keyword leadership. That's a very big word, and not everybody fills those shoes. And we want to get your spin on that, right? So these two elements. One is the corporate structure, culture, and why people kind of like, get lost into it and not make it. And certainly, like, you talked about the leadership concept, which is not, for everyone. Not everybody that is in a management role, for example, is a leader, and that's a big deal. And most people mistake that. I'm a manager, I'm a director, I'm a VP. Are you really a leader or you're not? You can have the title, you can have the money, but necessarily not, the leadership skills. And then the other one is, why people leave, the corporate, because it's probably a lot more secure. It's more work at the beginning, but it's a long-term, satisfaction. The other thing that you mentioned about strategy, corporate strategy, and plans, not every, a lot of businesses go in with a plan, and that plan will never stay the same. I mean, that plan is really moving as you go. You put a 3 years, 5 year, 10-year plan, but a lot of things do impact how that plan applies. So let's talk about those elements right now, just the corporate culture, the leadership, and the business plans. And then we can transit into the actual, really the transfer or the transition into the entrepreneurship or the business world, small business particularly, and how we can help those folks that are really not demotivated in the corporate world and they want to really become their own bosses, or whatever the motivation behind the move is. Because I mean, there's multiple reasons, but the ultimate reason is to make money and just be stable and own your own freedom, right? But so let's talk about that, because I know you do a lot of that. That's part of what you do. So let's talk about these elements.
Where do you want to go first?
Well, we'll start with just the corporate culture, in general, and, why it is, almost 90% of people are in that world. and then from there, let's talk about how it impacts people in terms of career paths. Is it a dead end? Because some people think it's a dead end. You work, you get a retirement, at 65, 67, and you got a little paycheck that you get, and that's about it. That's your, pension plan, and hopefully you survive. Is that even a good strategy?
The corporate world as such is a fuzzy concept anyway, because there is no such thing as the corporate world. There are very, very, very different corporations out there. So there are people that choose the corporate world and are extremely happy with where they are. I work with some of these companies. They are my clients. People couldn't be happier to be working for that corporation. These businesses typically do more than just make money. They provide meaning, they provide orientation, they give people the freedom to experiment, to discover their true passions, to bring their own purpose to work, to do something with that. These businesses are nothing, you can't compare them with what people typically think about when they hear the term the corporate America, the corporate world. Because what we have in mind are, let's say, not necessarily the best examples of businesses that you want to work for. When we hear the term the corporate world and making it in corporate America, we think about all these negative connotations, like all the grind, the extra work, the suffering, all the extra hours you put in. And it's like, the TV series, The Office, all these things come into play, But what we really have to understand when we talk about the corporate world is that there are actually people that fit in this world, that love this world, that need this environment to thrive, that are, for example, definitely not born an entrepreneur. So if you choose to work in the corporate world, that is per se nothing good and nothing bad, nothing you should thrive for, or something you should avoid. It just is a concept, an environment that you need to consciously pick. So if you decide to work in a corporation, especially when you're young, just do it, experience it, get those years under the belt. 1, 2, 3 years in a big corporation, you can only learn. And then you might figure out that it's not necessarily the right environment for you. But that doesn't mean that the corporate environment isn't right for you. It might only be that particular corporate culture that isn't right for you, or the particular leader that you work for. You already mentioned that some people, actually a lot of people, have a title that they don't fill with being a leader. They just have a title. They lead from a place of authority or position rather than a place of influence and a place where they help people grow and thrive, which should be the ultimate goal of leadership. If you understand, or if you realize that a leader isn't right for you, pick a different leader. Stay in the same company if you find another area that speaks to you. If that entire company isn't for you, maybe even pick a different company, maybe in the same industry or in a different industry, and stay in the corporate world. If you then, after another year or two, figure out, well, I'm kind of running into the same issues here, do some deep work. Try to understand whether you are the issue, or whether the business is the issue, whether the industry is the issue, or whether the corporate setting is the issue. There could be multiple reasons. There are so many people that never do this deep work and therefore end up completely sad, drained, and overworked. Some suffer from burnout or even worse, because they never really understood that what they want in life might not be able to achieve in that position or in that particular company. The most dangerous thing that I have seen is young people that are kind of hooked through or by perks, by big business salaries, nice shiny offices, corporate retreats, and all the other shiny things. And all of a sudden, they have built themselves a golden cage that it is hard to escape from. So that is definitely something you should avoid. If you realize that it's not for you, trust that instinct and leave before it's too late. Of course, you probably have to pay back some student loans and things like that. But let's be honest, that's money. That's just money. And there is enough money out there. If you realize that you should rather be in entrepreneurship, then switch lanes. If you realize that it's not for you, don't ride a dead horse. It's just not working. And you already said it. It's a long run. You've been there for 30 years. Do you really want to spend the biggest part of your waking hours and your life in something that just doesn't fit? And if the answer is, well, I'm not sure, then you better start digging. And if you in that digging, you might want to work with a coach that can help you through some questions and discover what is really for you. And then you will see it clearer than ever and will take a decision. So in a nutshell, the corporate world is a great place to be if it matches your personality and your strengths and what feels right for you in life. And entrepreneurship is the same thing. By the way, if you say the corporate world isn't easy, then you probably should try to be an entrepreneur, because that is not easy either.
Well, we got to talk about that because I think that's the first of all, thank you, Alex, because I think the way you broke it down is the probably the simplest way I've heard it, and it's just as simple as that. I mean, you're right. There is something for everyone, as they say, right? And it may be for you, it may not be for you, but at entry point, very few people can start the world of business on their own, but the experience that you get, the knowledge that you acquire throughout the corporate world, there's a lot of stuff, there's structure, there's things that you will pick up that you might not have on the onset when you just start a business, because you would have to learn all that stuff on the go, but no one is there for you to teach it. To your point, if there's no coach or someone, and believe it, this whole coach thing has not been, in 30 years ago, it was not as relevant or prevalent.
Yeah, it didn't really exist back then.
It didn't exist, exactly. So most people would have had to really find themselves, what the business is. I have a few businesses over the years, and some succeeded, some didn't. But it is, like you said, it's a journey on its own. It's difficult, and I can share stories about it. But it's not my show; it's really yours today. So we're going to talk about that. But the concept that you've put ahead of us right now is that it's not a corporate yes or bad. Is it bad? Is it good? Is it for you? Is it not for you? And there's different levels of that as well. You enumerate a couple. I mean, it could be your leader, it could be the department, it could be the career path, it could be the position you're in, it could be many things. It could be you. That's the other thing. To your point, we don't do some self-searching, all the time. We always do this. We never do this, right? It's just
and you realize it, right? If you point your finger to someone, there are inherently three fingers pointing back at you. So you gotta start the digging.
I love it, which is true. But again, how many people you think are aware of that? Many are not, because we always want to talk about the others. One of the books, principles that I apply is called the I don't know if you probably heard of it or read it, the OZ principle. One of the best, accountability books, and it's really talking about above the line and below the line, all this stuff, and really, which is basically see it, solve it, own it, and do it, and kind of like don't have to blame the world for your errors and for your not making it right. Now there are factors, as you said, and you can wind up in the wrong division, the wrong leadership, or or lack of leadership rather, and that could be a problem. You're not being trained, you're not being molded, you're not being, coached to be the next level, and you find yourself in a dead end. And I think you also alluded to the shiny office or the shiny cage. There is a promise, in the leadership, in the corporate world. I mean, when I was a kid, you grew up with the idea, like, you want to make it, and go to the next level, and become one of those executives. And I actually did personally, but it was a long journey, and it's not easy. And a lot of people think that, you just get there. You don't get there overnight. And it's a lot of sweat, a lot of days, a lot of work, a lot of hours. And, but it could be a trap if you don't know how to manage it. You have to know how to operate within the corporate world. But in parallel, when you think about being a complete independent, business ownership yourself, that's a whole thing. I mean, to your point, corporate is just a corporation is a corporation. I can start a corporation with you right now on Legal Zoom live with everybody, and we have a corporation. Hey, I got a corporate business, right? We can have it. But what does that mean? It's really just a name, and it's just a legal entity. But now, what does that mean, right? The action that takes place. You can start it from one person to 100,000 people working for you, right? But how to get to that journey, that's not easy. So that's the part that we wanted at least to get, at this point of the show, is to just identify these key elements to people. Because I hear that all the time, like, oh, it's the dead end street, it's bad. Yes, it's how you plan it. It's how you strategize your life. And before you know it, it could be too late. I mean, you made the leap 5 years within the corporate world. I kind of did the same thing, except that I go back and forth. I have like two paths going at the same time. I don't put my eggs in one basket, so I kind of have to keep doing. I do consulting, I do the work. Whenever there's a good opportunity, I take it. But at the same time, I never have to always rely on the corporate world, because God forbid something happens. And I personally been there. When company shuts down, and then like what happens? You have to have something to fall back, and it can happen to anyone. The pandemic showed exactly that. Many people were like having shiny careers, and then boof, it's gone. It's tough. You wanted to say something next? Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. Well, so that was the first part. We talked about that. Now, you mentioned something about the leadership, and I love the way you said it, which is people have the role, but they lead from authority. Or just the position, I am the boss, and that's the end of it. You're going to do what I tell you, and that's it. Even if you're smarter or whatever, it doesn't matter. They fear your intellect, they fear your abilities, and sometimes that is a bad thing. And that's not leadership. Leadership is the opposite of that. Is people want to follow you, jump over the cliff if they have to, because who you are, and they follow you. And it's a well said. There's this common saying that we hear all the time. People leave in the business world. People leave managers and not their jobs. Because they just can't stand, whoever that person is. It could be a problem. Some of these people can hurt companies, and they do hurt companies. And that's the need for your exercise, for your work. For example, when you teach leadership skills and things like that to corporations, you are turning people, and teaching them how to be leaders versus how to be just, a title. And so I want to just take some time with you, Alex, to cover that piece, because that is a big deal also. And like people watching here, I mean, whether they are consumers or they are actually, well, even the consumers or listeners in general, they probably wind up in a corporate environment one way or the other, either by experience or through it as a job. So, but what do you say to them in terms of, some of the tips, how to operate with leaders, and also some of the tips maybe on some of the key folks that are in positions, they should kind of like, almost adjust themselves to realize where they stand?
I want to talk about this topic of authority and position for a moment. Authority as such comes from perceived likability. So do I like that person? Am I inclined to listen to that person? Does this person help me grow? And is this person authentic in the sense that they live what they preach, they walk the talk? I understand why they do what they do and why they say what they say. They have a clear moral compass that they follow. They are not like a flag in the wind, left, right, up, down. And that is a good thing to be. So authority, leading with authority, is something great, but authority doesn't come from a position. Authority is lent to you by the people that you lead, and you can't force that. So if you lead from a position, then you're not leading, you're managing, you're demanding, and you're not leading in that way. Leading means, to me, helping the people that are in my team or that are in a project team that I lead. Leadership doesn't have to do anything with a title. It means I help the people around me see where we want to go and help them find the way. I don't tell them the way. I help them. I facilitate a process. I ask questions. I am curious. I create an environment where people can grow and thrive. And you don't need a title. You don't need to be a VP or a head of or God knows what. Actually, some of my clients are getting rid of all these titles now because they see that they do more bad than good. And they are moving to a more fluid way of collaborating. And that doesn't mean all of a sudden there's no one who takes decisions anymore. It doesn't mean that there is no one who calls the shots in the end when it comes to budget allocation or things like that. But the entire process is more transparent. Responsibility is shared at the lowest possible level. And I see that a lot of organizations do have quite some room to improve the way they understand leadership and use the power that this concept can bring to an organization. I believe that one of the biggest strengths of great workplaces is that they help the people that work with them understand how they contribute to make this world a better place. Not only through, let's say, charity work that the organization supports, but actually through their daily work. But that means that the organization and the persons working in that organization need to have an understanding of the impact that they want to create in the world. And not every organization out there has a great altruistic character or anything like that. There are businesses out there that are in shady industries that are duping people out of money, that just aren't good places and aren't good people. Everyone else should try to understand what the impact is that they want to have in the world. I kind of try to avoid the word purpose here because it is so overused that I can't hear it anymore. It has become a buzzword in the corporate world. Just the latest research that I read some time ago points to the fact that about 85% of businesses in the US that have a corporate purpose statement, that statement doesn't mean anything to anyone in that business. And you know why? Because most of them have been designed by ad agencies or other external businesses. And it's just purpose washing. Someone feels they need to have a purpose because research shows that purpose-driven businesses have more loyal clients, that they can charge higher prices, that they are seen as great investment vehicles, etc., etc. There's great stuff around that. But when you just tag your purpose statement on your website and then you don't earn it and don't live in the same way and operate in the same way, then this is just wrapping a veneer around a less noble core. And people will discover that. They will see that you're purpose washing. Your employees will see that, and it will be demotivating for them, and they leave. So rather than talking about purpose, because it's been such a buzzword, I would love to talk about impact, the impact that an organization creates, the tangible change that they bring to their clients for a better good. One of my biggest corporate clients, they talk about the impact that they create that's crafted in their purpose statement is all about helping patients before they even know that they need what they need. So their claim is doing now what patients need next. It is something that inspires a ton of people to want to work for that business. Very often, they themselves or someone in their family or friends has suffered from severe illness, and they have seen how that particular business has actually made it possible to find the right type of cure, the right type of treatment for that disease in a fast and efficient way. So it is visible, tangible impact that counts for these people rather than, I don't know, a big check or job security, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And thank you for breaking that out, because you covered this whole thing about mission and purpose of corporations, which is, to your point, it's more of just a standardized procedure. Everybody needs to have that. Companies have to provide that. That means the show. But it is a weird thing, because in essence, if you're a true leader, you do have a vision and a mission, and you want to bring inclusion. I mean, everybody in that operation or in your business world should feel and believe and be part of that. Also, the decision, you're right. I mean, a lot of businesses are going to different models, because the old models were basically decisions were made in a room with 5 or 6 people, and everybody else is just basically just doers, just get it done, right? And that was actually, the model for I guess few decades, and now a lot of companies have shown that model doesn't work. I mean, the latest thing that we discovered was remote work versus office work. That the debate is still on, and is that working? Is that not working? Did it work? Did it not? I mean, to be honest with you, the pandemic did kind of put a divide on that one, and showed that, hey, a lot of companies thrived through it, and nothing changed. As a matter of fact, production was better. People were happier. Yeah. So let's talk about that. What happened? A lot, for the longest, people were always designed to, like, you got to wake up, you got to show up at 9 o'clock, you got to clock in and clock out and do your thing. And if you didn't show up to the office, things were not going to happen. And I can relate to that. In the 90s, your computer was at the office. There was no way of us communicating with the office until you check in the morning, and you have to be there in front of your actual workstation. We don't have that. We haven't had that problem in years with the internet and all the softwares that we have, and the technology, the remote technology we have, the technology. Things have changed. So adaptability is a big deal for corporations. And some of the early companies that adopted these are the tech companies, right? Silicon Valley. I mean, like the Googles and all these guys, they kind of like had changed the dynamic of business, corporate, world and environment. And people love to work those places, and some other places are still, kind of rigid. They're still very old school, and they haven't adapted yet. And chances are they're struggling these days. And so what happened? What happened in your experience? Obviously, you see this is your life. This is what you do. You kind of almost, you're the surgeon. You come in and try to solve these problems for these people.
Let me put it that way. Everything that comes with remote work is not really my ballgame. It has more to do with operations, how you actually operate your business. It really doesn't matter from a strategic perspective where people sit and do their work. It kind of influences certain decisions, but it is not a strategic decision whether your business moves it is strategic if you move, let's say, from a software business to a software as a service business. It's cloud-based, then it's not a disk anymore that you put into your computer. But it really doesn't matter to the people that I work with on a strategic level, whether the operations are more dispersed, more remote, more, kind of fluid, as I said earlier, or not. This has more to do with culture. And there is the link to strategy, because a business strategy creates culture like nothing else can if you implement it in a proper way. And of course, it matters to the people where they work and where they contribute and where they sit for, let's say, creating their part to make their business successful. But it is not, I'm definitely not the right one to talk about why things went down the way they went down, everything around the Great Resignation and things like that. From my own personal experience, I've been working both in a typical office environment and fully remotely. I see that there are benefits in both, and I see that there are jobs that are just not made for remote work, and I see that there are jobs that are perfectly made for remote work. So I'm not the perfect expert to talk about it. I just see that there is a certain connection between corporate culture and business strategy. And in that context, we sometimes talk about these things, but they really don't come up very often in the context of my work, especially because I am not focused on big businesses anymore in the way that I used to be. So with the pandemic, I also not only switched my business model, I also switched who my ideal client is. So I still fulfill my contracts with the big corporations that I love working with, and I probably will work with them and for them for quite some time in the future. But my real focus today is more on the smaller businesses, and they have adapted new ways of working way faster, because for them it just means, hey, wait a second, I can save a ton of money by not having an office space, by not paying the rent, by not having to commute to my office or whatever. So they have embraced the new ways of working like no other company did. They were super fast in that. Today, and this is the best proof, 100% of my work is remote. It is ridiculous how small the amount of face-to-face work is these days for what I do. And the work that I do is mainly with smaller businesses. And even with the big businesses, of course, they have rewarded back to face-to-face offsite retreats and things like that. But the smaller businesses, they enjoy working remotely because it makes work so much better. Is that even a word? Integratable into your life. So why would I want to spend 2 hours in a car each day sitting in a traffic jam? Of course, I can do phone calls. Of course, I can listen to podcasts or God knows what. But what I really want to do is spend time with the people that I love. And that is so much easier when you can integrate your work and your life in a different way than you could have done pre-pandemic. So I believe we have learned a lot about what we crave as human beings and how certain aspects of work life stand in the way of that. And we took the opportunity during the pandemic to get rid of it and to find new ways to collaborate, to build communities in the digital space, to build meaning, belonging, without being at the same physical space. So I guess in a nutshell, I would say we are not yet there. So there will be more changes coming our way, I believe, as some businesses will stay remote, some businesses will be hybrid, and other businesses, they will, for whichever reason, and maybe it is a lack of leadership and a lack of vision, and a lack of understanding how it can damage a business if you demand people to come back to the office. Some will do that anyway, and they will suffer brain drain like no other business, I guess, because people will just not accept that command and control anymore.
Well, Alex, thank you. And I love what you said earlier, is that there are different, it's for everybody. There are different businesses types or types of functions that need someone to be physically available and in an office space, and others that will completely be independent and still work remotely and give the same. I mean, some areas of business has always been remote, like telesales and customer service and some of these facilities, they've been using some industries. They've been using people working from home for years already. But you're right. It just changed, the dynamic. And you're right. After the pandemic, a lot of people, I've seen this on my own, environment, where some people were reluctant coming back to the office. And when they were kind of asked to do this, they kind of almost rebelled and just left. To your point, that's the resignation, spike that there is, or at least the people not coming back to work. Even the work, environment has changed now, how people are seeing, corporate and working and finding different things. Everybody wants to be online, remote, home based, that kind of thing. But that's, but I think what you said is best, is that you have a little bit for everybody. It doesn't, to your point, if it is a strategy discussion, and this involves how do we best, get our people motivated and get them to produce. And if that means they have to be working remote, that's a part of the strategy discussion, but it's not really the best, it depends on the nature of the job itself. Now, small businesses, you said it yourself, you've been doing this remotely, and many businesses started in the pandemic or just pre-pandemic, and post-pandemic, forget about it. It's just every time I talk to someone right now, it's pretty much someone that started, a side business or an actual full business that making serious money, off, and they're doing it from home, and they're doing it at their own pace, and it's just working. What's the secret of that? I know you mentioned something about it, the fact that they're happy, they're with their families, they do the stuff, they're enjoying life better. And that comes with a different level of stress, or a lower level of stress, therefore they can do more. You're right. There's no worse feeling when you're rushing to the office and you're in traffic and you're cutting people and you're getting excited, you get to that office and you're pissed. I remember back in the days where I was called to meetings at 7:30 in the morning. And, those were mandatory meetings. And I still question, like, what could have we done at 7:30? We could have done at 9:30. But that's another, we can have the whole discussion about that topic. But the fact of the matter, nothing, because I can tell you there was nothing that's different, right? But it was just the culture, right? You had to live with that mentality, and you have to kind of do, sometimes you didn't have the authority to, talking about authority or power to even, decline or anything. You were there because you were told to, otherwise you have no job. You could leave. That's another story. Those are decisions you have to make. But it was a different world. Today is different. So in your world, you're helping small business today. What do you think is the key denominator why people are really into this world? They're changing the dynamics. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. You mentioned something powerful earlier. If you think corporate world is difficult, try being an entrepreneur. So why is it, as far as I know, it is difficult, because I've been there and I'm still there, and yet people are willing to take that challenge, and they didn't before.
There is this romantic view about entrepreneurship, that you are your own boss and you can work from wherever you want, with whomever you want, and however you want. And honestly speaking, to a certain degree, that is true, especially if you are a solopreneur and don't have a team to show up for, etc. But that also means you're a solopreneur. You got to take care of everything yourself. Even if you outsource it to another business, that they can take care of it, in the end, it's your responsibility. And you got to make it work. And you need to be prepared for a drought period, right? So there needs to be a certain runway to get your business off the ground. If you don't have that runway, becoming an entrepreneur can be extremely draining, and it can do harm to your mental health. And you really have to be careful about how you set up your business. If all your savings are in that business and you at the same time are responsible to put food on the table for a family, that can be a huge burden on your shoulders. And you got to ask yourself these questions before you actually jump into that romantic picture of becoming an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Really, it's not for everyone. And having a transition, especially when you come from the corporate world, some sort of entrepreneurship light, with a side hustle, just finding out whether this is for you, whether it gives you more than it takes, could be a wise decision in order to just play with a thought, and gain your first experiences. You said earlier, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think this is the only sentence I remember from my investments course at university, and it's absolutely true. So just don't make that shift without thinking it through. The businesses that I currently work with, most of the businesses are somewhere in the lower half of the 7-figure range. These businesses aren't startups. These businesses have a client base. These businesses have had enough runway to get off the ground. So I typically don't consult with businesses before it's too late. I consult with businesses in a growth trajectory. The businesses that are somewhere in the 6-figure range, or not even there, those new businesses, small businesses, people that run these businesses, they need to understand one thing. Most likely, they don't know how to run a business because that's not what they learned. That's not what their subject matter expertise is. Most people build a business based on a certain subject matter expertise, based on a certain experience, based on something that they have done earlier, or based on something that they're truly passionate about. And that most likely has nothing to do with how to build a successful business. So it is very wise, if you are building a business, to bring people on board, not necessarily hiring them, but like having coaches, having consultants that don't sell you the shiny marketing stuff, but that help you build a business from the ground up, that help you avoid pitfalls. So to all you business builders out there, don't buy the shiny marketing course. It's not something that you want to invest your money in. You need to understand first the dynamics of building a business. If you then realize that a shiny marketing course helps you, then it's not shiny anymore. Then it's really good investment. And the same is true for everything else. It's not just the marketing things. And I say that even though I majored in marketing, okay? So I love marketing, but it's not the point. The point is you need to be careful as an entrepreneur where you put your time, money, and attention to. Because those things in the end, if they don't matter, you never get that time back. And if you spend your savings and you run out of runway, you just run out of business in the end and you haven't won anything. Most people that I have met that ran out of runway, they just never really understood what it takes to build a business. They just thought that they are so passionate about their product or their service idea that the clients will come just in flux, you know, but they haven't understood that building a business is something completely different than being passionate about a service or a product. And only when those things come together in a good way, you can build a business out of it. So yeah, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, but it's a high reward route to go. And there are a few people out there, well, it's not a few, there's a ton of people out there that you can ask for support that can help you get this done. And I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm not just the only person who is a strategy facilitator, but you really need to understand that not everything that has the label strategy actually is strategy. A lot of things are just tackling small areas that are important for a business, but that don't make or break a business. So in a nutshell, before you jump into that, I don't want to say Shark Tank, but cold water, make sure you dip your toe into it and be like, is that something that I can be comfortable with or not? And then take an informed decision.
Alex, you're a wise man, I have to say.
I paid my dues.
Well, listen, I know we have a hard stop. And, listen, there's so much we can be talking about, and maybe we could do a sequel to this one and dive into that second part. But I do want people, yes, you did say there's a lot of people out there that can help people and guide them, especially understanding, the business needs. But we have you, and you do this, and we'd like people to actually connect with you. Hopefully, they get a resource in you to help them find a way, at least address whatever they need to address only, early on before they get, to your point, out of runway, and then it's too late, right? We don't want them to crash. We want them to be able to take off nicely. And so how can we get people to reach out to you?
The easiest way is through my website, alexthestrategist.com. There's tons of free resources on this website, so you don't need to hire me in order to tap into the resources or templates that I have. Some of the most valuable ones are for free, available on my website. You can just download them and start digging your brain into what business strategy actually is and how it helps you. From there, get in touch. There's tons of different ways of how I can support you. There is also an opportunity to learn more about my upcoming books. One this year in 2022, the other one sometime in the future. They are both almost finished, but everything has its time. And I always love to hear from listeners from podcasts where I was a guest on, what the most valuable piece for them was and what they took away. So please be in touch. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Alex. Now, the books, you said one's coming out in 2022, one's coming out in the future. Those are the ones that you have that you've been working on, or is there one that's already published?
No, they're not yet published. So the first book in this year, I will actually self-publish. And for the bigger book, we hope to find a publishing company soon. We actually haven't pitched yet, so we're in the preparation phases of getting that up and running. And we haven't run out of runway in that case either.
Well, listen, maybe a publisher is watching or listening. Maybe they can hear the story, and maybe they love to do that. Is there any name, anything that or the content that we would like to share with them about, like maybe give them a little trailer on the book or books?
Well, there's some information on my website about it. Okay. And also the framework and the concept of the book is on the website already. You can play with it. It's an interactive graphic that you can just explore and understand. And hey, if there's a publisher out there, please be in touch. There's a literary agent that has my book under contract. So it's a professional, let's say, we're taking the professionally necessary steps that we need to take in that direction.
Listen, I mean, you never know, right? Who's listening, right? And sometimes these are the best ways. Surprise. Hey, hello, we heard this, and, would love to talk to you about your concept. And I know you have some serious stuff, and we haven't even touched on the different elements of, strategy and all that. I do actually want to ask you eventually to come back, and maybe we do a follow-up.
I'd love to.
Yeah, because 1 hour is not enough, dude. It's years of expertise that we question in less than 59 minutes. It's just crazy, but definitely. So I know, Alex, you got to go, but I enjoyed this exchange, and thank you for the time. Definitely, I'll get in touch with you to see if we can book a second show here and just take it to the next step. Hopefully, we can do more digging on the book. But so thank you for all the insights.
Thank you very much for having me.
I appreciate it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this particular show, and we'll get Alex back. So I'm your host, Hurricane H. We'll be talking soon. Different guest, different show, different topic. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.